any of the DC vocational schools have job placement programs?
Just as important as working to build a local economy that creates jobs is having a strategy for building a strong workforce that's qualified for those new jobs. We believe it's all about job training and marketability. In other words, making sure DC residents learn to earn. Welcome back to Inside One City. I'm Mayor Vincent Gray. Joining me for a conversation about the city's various job training strategies is David Zipper, Director of Business Development at the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, and Dr. Jonathan Gueverra, who's the CEO of our community college of the District of Columbia, which now is a little more than 2 years old, right, Dr. Gueverra?
Certainly, yep, just over.
I want to welcome both of you here today. You have an enormous responsibility on behalf of the people of the city. You know, it's often said, and I heard it recently at the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting, that governments really can't create jobs, but they can influence the conditions that result in new jobs. So let me just start. What can the D.C. government do, David, to facilitate the growth of jobs in the city?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Mr. Mayor, that for us to keep jobs in the city and to grow them, we need to have employers in the city that are going to be successful and are going to grow here. And there are several things that we can do. The most basic level, I think, is to have it be easy to do business in the city. And that's why the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, DCRA, is so important. They just launched a Small Business Resource Center, which I think you were at the launch of just a couple of months ago.
Exciting.
It is very exciting because now any district business person or aspiring business person can go online to a website called dcra.ecenterdirect.com and sign up for a half-hour session with someone at DCRA who can walk them through all the regulatory processes and licensure processes. Any questions that they may have can be addressed then. At a basic level, that's what we need to be doing to make businesses succeed here. We also need to make sure that we have a workforce that's trained in the ways that employers are looking for. Employers follow where the workers are, and when we have a highly skilled workforce in the city with the right types of training that employers are looking for, the employers aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to want to be here and they're going to want to grow. And that's what we're striving to do.
Well, you put your finger on an important issue, and that is workforce development. We have an unemployment rate that's 9.5% or somewhere in that vicinity. Some areas of the city, very low. Other areas, extremely high as 25% in Ward 8. How do we impact that? Both of you have a responsibility in that area. Dr. Gueverra, the community college, has a responsibility for producing people with 2-year degrees, but inherent in all of that is a workforce development responsibility. How can we impact outcomes that improve job prospects for people in the city?
Well, I think that first of all, it's more than just the 2-year degrees. The 2-year degree at the community colleges is absolutely the ultimate for anyone, but we need to train people for entry-level workforce jobs and workforce certifications. We also need to be providing professional development, which we do. We work with the fire department, DDOT, and several other district agencies, as well as businesses. We also need to create opportunities for new or emerging occupations. When we started the community college, one of the first programs that we had approved was a program in fashion merchandising. And everybody said, geez, you're absolutely out of your mind. This is not New York. And my response was, well, if we want to be like in New York and we don't have a fashion industry, do we wait for the fashion industry to come here? Or do we build the kind of entrepreneurial programs, including things like fashion?
So reaching out more proactively to generate interest.
Exactly. And then as we do that, going back to David's point about employers' needs, we're putting ourselves a little bit ahead of the curve for the employers, because employers want to come to areas where people are underemployed, basically. They want people who are qualified and working at a lower level than they should be.
Are we beginning to see areas that heretofore haven't been ones for job possibilities in the city that now are beginning to emerge, like the fashion industry? Are we really seeing jobs developing there? Are people, are entrepreneurs really interested in coming to the district to do things that haven't been done here before?
I absolutely think they are. I'll give you one simple example: the technology sector. I think people think of Washington as a federal city, as I believe Director Trigoning may mention before, but there's much, much more going on here. And in fact, once a month there are over 600 people gathering to be part of what's something called a DC Tech Meetup, just young people interested in technology in the city. And we're seeing clusters of young technology companies centering in places like DuPont Circle and Gallery Place and in H Street Northeast as well. Living Social, everyone knows about now. They're a $15 billion company. But what's particularly exciting are small businesses in the tech community that are starting up and the employment opportunities they create. In fact, I was just in a meeting at the community college with some of Dr. Gueverra's staff earlier this week with several tech companies where we were, and DC Public Schools with their STEM coordinator, discussing the sorts of needs and types of skills that the tech community is looking for, so we can make sure that these companies are hiring local residents and young people for these jobs that are being created. They're very exciting, well-paid jobs.
It really is exciting, and you know, one of the things I think we can do is to provide space to help these folks find space as they go through an incubation period. But you know, what's on the minds of a lot of people is that may not be the field for me. I may not have much more than a high school education. I may have lower level skills than that. Is there a future for me? We've been talking about you know, MVM you know, strategies coming to the District of Columbia. Will involve what, assembly of inkjet cartridges.
That's right.
Will there be jobs like that for people who may not have the highest level of education they wish they had attained?
There will be, and there are. And you talk right now to the Department of Employment Services. People are getting placed right now, district residents, into jobs in the hospitality sector, into restaurants, into hotels, into security guards, into healthcare, and beyond construction, which is often what people think of first. And I think one of the responsibilities that we have in the district is to make sure that we're helping district residents understand where those opportunities are in fields throughout our city, and not just telling them this might be an interesting position to go into, but let's give them data. Say if you go get trained in this program, historically 80% of people who get trained in this program get jobs. That's unfortunately not information that's available right now to district residents, but we want to make it so.
What can we do for companies to make it easier for them to want to locate here, and then of course to be able to find qualified employees who live in the District of Columbia? You know, again, it bothers me, the statistic that says only about 30% of the jobs in the District of Columbia are filled by people who actually live here. We can't tax income at its sources, so those tax dollars leave every day. So while we want to grow the economy and grow jobs, we also want to grow those jobs for people who live in the city. So what can we do to help employers actually find people in the city who they can hire, who are qualified for these jobs?
You're exactly right. There are about a little over 700,000 jobs in the District of Columbia, and only 220,000 of those jobs are held by district residents, give or take. That's the most recent numbers that I've seen. And in order to narrow that gap, to make sure that our residents have access to the jobs in the city right now that our district residents are not holding, we need to bring the private sector into what the Workforce Investment Council, which is a great vehicle to do that, that we're really restarting and bringing over to the Deputy Mayor's office, getting them engaged with the workforce system, having conversations with them. I'm Director of Business Development in the Deputy Mayor's office, and every day I'm talking with employers to get to know them and talk to them about their needs, whether it's incentives or understanding district neighborhoods. I want to also talk to them about the job opportunities that they have available coming down the pipeline, so that they're going to make sure they're working with us to get that information out there to our residents.
And just to add on to that, David, and I know this is always very controversial, but we also need to assure that the training that people are receiving it's relevant, and that in fact they're being placed in those jobs, and that the employers can, you know, absolutely rely on somebody who has come out of a particular training program, and then we need to follow up to show the value added that these training programs have provided. And a part of that, I think, also is getting employers to recognize that for as many jobs, each of them, if we do it right, can become an apprenticeship type on-the-job training for some individuals, because we have a lot of older individuals who cannot afford to simply go to school or training full-time while they support a family.
Life moves on.
Exactly.
I want to underscore the important role that each of you play. You're relatively new to the city because the community college is new, and David, your position has been created only recently. It was a promise we made during the campaign to have a Director of Business Development. So I'm excited that both of you are where you are. I think you have the right perspective, and I think it's going to result in jobs for our citizens here in the city. So thank you all very much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Up next, the role of retail in its many forms and how it works with our economic development efforts here in Washington. Inside One City. We'll be right back in just a minute. Thanks, guys.
What is the district doing to attract green jobs?